I moved to the suburbs for peace and quiet. You know, birds chirping, neighbors waving from a safe distance, lawnmowers humming on Saturday mornings like suburban lullabies. What I got instead was a clipboard-wielding tyrant in orthopedic sandals named Karen. Of course her name was Karen. Not just any Karen, though. This one came with HOA authority and the self-importance of a Bond villain. The first week after moving in was deceptively calm. The sky was blue, the grass was green, and the air smelled like overpriced fertilizer. I'd barely started unpacking when I found the first note. Violation. Trash bins left out past 10 a.m. It was 10:07. I laughed it off at first. I figured it was just a one-time thing. A little neighborhood over-eagerness. Maybe someone didn't get enough hugs as a child. But oh no, Karen was just warming up. Over the next 2 weeks, I got cited for inappropriate hedge height. They were 2 inches above regulation. Garage door left open too long, 20 minutes, while I brought in groceries. And my personal favorite, lack of uniform holiday decorations. It was July. Now, I'd heard HOA horror stories before. Suburban legends whispered at backyard BBQs. But this woman operated on a whole other level. Not only did she issue fines like she was paid per complaint, she had the audacity to confiscate things. Yes, confiscate. For improper compliance, no less. I found out from my neighbor Dale, retired Vietnam vet and apparently HOA war historian, that Karen once took someone's welcome mat because it said, "Wipe your paws," and was unprofessional. She also removed a pink flamingo because it was psychologically disruptive to the visual harmony of the cul-de-sac. Her actual words. So yeah, I knew I was living in HOA purgatory. But I could live with passive-aggressive notes and obscure fines. What I could not live with was someone touching my garden gnomes. Let me explain, I don't have a gnome obsession. I'm not one of those weirdos who decorates their lawn like a Dungeons and Dragons tavern. I had three simple, smiling gnomes, Larry, Barry, and Gary. Tasteful, cheerful, modest. But apparently, to Karen, they were a visual apocalypse. One afternoon, as I watered my modest garden and Larry stood proudly among the tulips, Karen marched up the sidewalk like she was invading Normandy, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her angular nose like judgmental daggers. She didn't say hello. She never did. Just pointed a red-painted nail at Larry. "That's a violation," she announced. I blinked. "What is?" "Those gnomes. There are too many." "Too many." I looked at them. "There are 3. And the rule is no more than 2 decorative statues visible from the street." I pulled up the HOA manual. Yes, I had a PDF of it on my phone, because I wasn't born yesterday, and scrolled. Nothing. Not one word. "There's no such rule," I said. Karen didn't blink. "Well, there should be." And with that, she turned and left. I wish I could say I shrugged it off. I did try, but the next morning, something felt off. I stepped outside in my slippers, coffee in hand, birds chirping, and froze. Larry was missing. I checked the flower bed, under the porch, even the trash bin, in case some neighborhood raccoon had taken up interior decorating. But Larry was gone. I almost didn't believe it myself. Maybe I misplaced him. Maybe I moved him and forgot. Maybe someone thought it was funny. So I replaced Larry with a new gnome, Terry, and moved on with my life. The next morning, Terry was gone too. Now I knew I wasn't crazy. This was not a coincidence. This was war. So I did what any reasonable adult with mild trust issues and an Amazon Prime account would do. I bought a motion sensor camera and a new gnome. Meet Jerry. I set up the camera, pointed it right at the gnome, and waited. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because I was scared, because I was angry. Because someone was screwing with me on principle. Because some petty bureaucrat in a sun hat thought she could impose her arbitrary rules on my property. The next morning, I sprinted outside before even brushing my teeth. Jerry was gone. Again. But this time, I had video. I watched the footage while brushing toast crumbs off my hoodie. The timestamp, 2:43 a.m. The scene, Karen, in her bathrobe, creeping across my lawn like a raccoon with a god complex. She picked up Jerry like she was stealing a state secret, looked around shiftily, and strutted away like she hadn't just committed garden gnome larceny. At that point, It wasn't about the gnomes anymore. It wasn't even about HOA rules. It was about pride, about principle, about reminding Karen that not everyone in the neighborhood was going to roll over and let her walk all over them like a welcome mat she didn't approve of. So I marched over to her house, knocked, waited, and when she opened the door with her usual mix of disdain and oversprayed perfume, I got straight to the point. You took my gnome. She didn't even flinch. Yes, it was in violation. No, it wasn't. There's no such rule. Well, it disrupts uniformity. I stared. You stole from me. I confiscated an unauthorized item in accordance with the HOA's mission of preserving neighborhood standards. That's called theft, Karen. She crossed her arms. Then report me. I smiled. Don't worry. If this continues, I absolutely will. She just scoffed, actually scoffed, and shut the door in my face. I stood there a second, listening to the deadbolt click. Then I smiled wider. Because Karen had no idea who she'd just pissed off. So after our little front porch standoff, I walked back to my house thinking, surely, that was enough. Surely, she got the message. But I forgot a crucial truth about Karens. They don't learn. They double down. I replaced Jerry with Barry Jr. and waited. You already know what happened. Gone. Poof. Vanished. But I didn't even flinch this time. I didn't curse or pace the lawn or scream into the void. Nope. I sat back, hit play on the camera footage, and there she was again. Same time, same bathrobe, same smug little waddle. I could have gone straight to the cops. Hell, I had enough evidence to get her banned from every HOA committee in the tri-state area. But no. Because there's revenge, and then there's performance art. I needed backup. So I called the one person I knew who had a talent for the absurd and a borderline unhealthy love for DIY traps. Derek. Derek is the kind of guy who owns night vision goggles just in case. Once built a fully functional potato cannon for a 4th of July party, and has been banned from 3 separate Facebook gardening groups for overuse of pyrotechnics. I called, told him what happened, laid it all out, the vanishing gnomes, the bathrobe heists, the HOA Gestapo routine. There was silence on the other end for about 3 seconds. Then, you magnificent bastard. I'm in. By the next afternoon, Derek showed up at my house with a trunk full of gear and the kind of grin that meant something very illegal was about to be technically legal. He tossed a duffel onto my porch. Motion sensors, infrared cameras, an industrial-grade flash rig. And this. He held up a weird canister. Is stickier than divorce court. It was some kind of non-toxic industrial gel, slow-drying, completely safe, but it clung to everything like trauma in a Pixar movie. The kind of stuff you'd have to shave off with a power washer and 3 therapy sessions. Derek gave the lawn a once-over. So, where do we plant the bait? I pointed to the flower bed. Front and center. The old place of honor. Nice. Classic. Bull. We named him Trap Gnome. He looked like he meant business. Little red hat tilted just so, plastic eyes full of righteous fury. But inside, laced with industrial-strength goo, ready to turn the next thief into a human lint roller. We rigged everything. Hidden cameras, pressure-sensitive lights, a timed DSLR set to burst the moment motion was detected. All of it synced to Derek's laptop. It was art. Just as we were finishing up, guess who strolled by like the queen of passive-aggressive land? Karen. Big sunglasses. Tennis visor. Clipboard, of course. She paused at the edge of my lawn, squinting at Trap Gnome like he'd insulted her minivan. Derek and I sat on the porch, sipping iced coffee like 2 bored bounty hunters. She sniffed. You replaced the statue, she said, like I'd just defaced Mount Rushmore. I smiled. You say statue. I say art installation. She pursed her lips and marched away. The second she turned the corner, Derek leaned in. She bit. I nodded. She'll be back tonight. And oh boy, she did not disappoint. We were in Derek's van across the street, watching everything in glorious night vision. At exactly 2:48 a.m., because, consistency, Karen crept onto my lawn like a raccoon high on self-righteousness. She tiptoed toward Trap Gnome with the confidence of someone who's never been punched in the face by karma. Bent down. Reached out. Click. The sensor triggered. Flash. Boom. High-powered photography lighting exploded in her face like a paparazzi ambush. Clack, clack, clack. The DSLR kicked in. Burst mode. A dozen shots in under 3 seconds. Karen screamed. And then the real magic happened. She tried to drop the gnome. She couldn't. Trapped gnome stuck to her like emotional baggage. Her hand yanked, twisted, flailed, but nope. He held on like a plastic barnacle from hell. And Karen? She panicked. I watched, tears in my eyes from laughter, as she spun in circles, flailing her gnome-glued arm like she was warding off a ghost. She danced across my lawn in fuzzy slippers, whisper screaming, trying not to wake anyone up. We waited until the moment was ripe. Then I strolled casually out of the van and across the street. I stood at the edge of my lawn, hands in my pockets, looking like the smug little homeowner I truly am. She froze. Gnome still attached. Oh hey, Karen, I said, yawning. Late night gardening. She sputtered something about me being a criminal. That I entrapped her. That I lured her. I just shrugged. You trespassed. You stole my property. You're holding the evidence. I'd say the case is pretty open and shut. She screeched. Literally screeched. You'll pay for this. I'll fine you. I'll take you to court. I smiled. Actually, no. Karen, you're the one who's going to answer for everything now. Right on cue, headlights swept down the road. Red and blue. Karen turned to look and blinked like a deer in Suburbia headlights. 2 officers stepped out, calm and slow. Karen tried to spin some ridiculous tale about dangerous traps, unlawful decorations, whatever. But it was over. I had the footage. I had the timestamps. I had, frankly, the most incriminating garden-themed photo shoot of the decade. One of the cops took one look at her gnome-glued hand and laughed out loud. Ma'am, you'll need to come with us. She resisted. She flapped. But she couldn't run. Not with trapped gnome tagging along like her shameful little sidekick. As they led her to the car, neighbors started emerging, some in robes, some with phones, all pretending they just happened to be out. My neighbor Janice leaned over and whispered, "What the hell was that?" She had been terrorizing the neighborhood for years, and now the cops took her away for stealing a gnome. I grinned. Sometimes it only takes a small statue to bring down a big tyrant. So, Karen got hauled away like the world's most passive-aggressive cat burglar, still gripping trapped gnome like he was her evil twin. I stood there on the lawn, neighbors trickling in, everyone murmuring and trying to pretend they weren't absolutely living for the drama. Derek came strolling over from the van, still holding his laptop, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. Got all of it. Every frame. Multiple angles. One slow-mo. It's art. I high-fived him right there on the sidewalk. Janice, bless her soul, came over holding a cup of chamomile tea like she hadn't just watched her long-standing nemesis get dragged away mid-crime spree. She terrorized this street for years, she whispered. Yelled at my kids for sidewalk chalk once. You're a hero. I shrugged, all modest. Just a man and his gnomes, ma'am. But let's not pretend I let that footage sit on a hard drive collecting digital dust. Oh no. By sunrise, Derek had cut together a glorious 30-second highlight reel, complete with dramatic zooms, epic music, and a final freeze frame of Karen's gnome-glued hand mid-scream. I uploaded it anonymously with the caption, HOA President Caught Red-Handed. Literally. And just like that, it took off faster than Karen issuing fines for garage paint. By lunch, 23,000 views. 4 HOA-specific Facebook groups reposted it. Someone photoshopped trapped gnome into a Marvel poster. Avengers, Suburban War. By dinner, 100K views. 3 different YouTubers had reacted to it. A TikTok dance trend started based on Karen's lawn panic shuffle. Derek and I sat on my porch, beer in hand, watching the view counter tick up like a scoreboard in a neighborhood revolution. How does it feel? Derek asked. Knowing you just broke the HOA? Like justice, I said, raising my bottle, with a side of petty. Of course, the HOA board tried to do damage control. They posted some painfully neutral PR speak on the neighborhood portal. The HOA does not condone any form of misconduct. All allegations are being taken seriously. Translation, we just saw our queen get dethroned on camera, and were panicking behind a Microsoft Word doc. But the damage was done. Emails poured in. Complaints from past victims. A few very satisfying "I told you so" messages. One resident even shared how Karen fined them for having non-regulation bird feeders. Bird feeders. By day 3, Karen was a certified meme. Someone printed her slow-motion gnome grab on a t-shirt. The caption? "Thou shalt not steal, especially not garden gnomes." Another neighbor created a lawn sign that read, "Gnome Lives Matter." I didn't make it, but I absolutely gave it 5 stars. Naturally, the local paper got wind. And naturally, they ran with it. Page 1. Headline in bold. HOA President Caught in Gnome Theft Scandal. Residents Rejoice. The photo? Karen mid-strobe light panic. Mouth open. Eyes wide. Trapped gnome like a cursed artifact in her claws. It was beautiful. I framed a copy. Then came the fallout. Karen was officially removed from the HOA board. Something about gross misconduct and unauthorized property seizures. No surprise there. But oh, the cherry on top? She was ordered to pay restitution for every single gnome, even the ones she claimed were recycled. Apparently, the HOA didn't take kindly to unauthorized nighttime salvage missions after all. She wrote a check that could have funded a small backyard wedding. After that, Karen disappeared like a bad smell caught in a strong breeze. Word spread that she sold her house and left in the dead of night. Not literally. More like 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, but still. Poetic. The neighborhood was free. No more notes. No more clipboard audits. No more HOA-approved paint color charts shoved into mailboxes like communist propaganda. Derek and I held an unofficial post-Karen celebration barbecue. I grilled. He brought lawn gnome-shaped cookies. Someone played the video on a loop on a portable projector. We drank. We laughed. And finally, we relaxed. As the sun dipped behind the rooftops, Derek leaned back in his chair and nodded at the now peacefully dull neighborhood. "You really did it, man." Took her down with a lawn ornament. I raised my beer again. Sometimes, all it takes is one gnome and a whole lot of spite. To pettiness. I clinked mine against his. To creativity. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.